Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we have cheese, chocolate, and wine. And we have the experts to talk about each of them. We're going to go around real quick and introduce everybody. I'm going to start off with Zoe. Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe Brickley. I'm up at Jasper Hill Farm in northern Vermont. I work for Jasper Hill, and we make cave-aged cheeses for our own cows, and we support some other small milk and cheese producers nearby. So I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit more about that.
Hi, Gillian Balance, Master Sommelier. I work as a Senior Education Manager for Treasury Wine Estates, some of the lovely wines that you're going to be enjoying with the cheeses and the chocolates today. It's a thrill to be here. It's nice to see that, you know, some East Coasters, you actually are on happy hour now. So hopefully you ladies have opened some bottles. Oh, you too, Michael. And started to enjoy some of the wines so that, you know, you kind of like can prime your palates for these amazing cheeses and chocolates. But it's great to be here. Thank you, Michael.
Welcome. Pauline.
Hi, I'm Pauline from Valrhona Chocolates, so a French chocolate company, and I'm based in New York. So yes, perfect timing for some cheese, wine, and chocolate for us. So happy to share more with you as well.
All right. So as I said, we have the experts here. So let's talk a little bit before we get going about what it is to be an expert. And I'm going to turn it over to Zoe because she is an American Society certified cheese professional, but also a certified sensory evaluator. But a lot of people ask, what is a CCP? Zoe?
Yes, I have a long string of letters, ACS, CCP, CCSE. Got that? So the Certified Cheese Professional exam was really built to mirror the organization that happens in the wine world, and maybe with beer, the Cicerones. So the cheese world felt a little bit behind in terms of an official status recognition of professionals who have proved themselves in some way. So we're still within the first 10 years of that program existing, and it's really been a group effort. So industry professionals who were sort of pre-validated by being in the business for a very long time came together, worked with a psychometric expert who's not an expert in cheese, but is an expert in test taking and giving, to define certain subject areas, and then to work with subject matter experts in those specific sub areas of cheese to come up with questions, multiple choice questions that were formatted psychometrically well and also accurately as far as cheese goes. And then of course you get those vetted. So it ended up with a 150 question multiple choice test, and covering a wide range of cheese handling to, you know, which breed of animal is associated with this favorite kind of cheese or famous kind of cheese. So really broad strokes. And so now there's this whole educational effort in the broader cheese world to prepare and study and become a certified cheese professional, which has just been so excited to participate in. So I've got to teach a lot more than I used to because there's so much interest in going after this this certification program. And then the certified sensory evaluator came around a couple of years later, and I actually got to be on the norming committee, so sort of a judge for that. And so 12 of us would sit around a table. We'd evaluate many cheeses in a row with a 60-point checklist. And then participants in the other room would be blind tasting these things. They don't know what kind of cheese it is or what the name of it is. And they fill out the same form. And then they use the judge's norming answers to see how closely aligned the tasters were. So that's been really fun. And it includes milk sniffing. So you spike milk with different aromatics, and then you like swirl it in a wine glass and see if you can pick up on the right aromatic, and you like choose from a list of 40 possibilities. So that was my favorite like part of the whole process, was like trying to detect those aromas in milk. So of course I could go on, but I'll cede the floor.
Zoe, I think you should be on masterclass. Sharing that knowledge. That sounds incredible. What fun to get to do that. Sure, I am Master Sommelier. I passed the exam in 2012 and became the 18th in the world to get my Master Sommelier diploma. So kind of similar to what Zoe was explaining in terms of educating about cheese. I did the same thing for wine. And it's been a great journey. I started my career at Windows on the World in the World Trade Center with a 150,000 bottle cellar. And I'd say that's where I really kind of laid the foundation for my career. Certainly helped me pass the exam several years later, but that's a 3-part process where you blind taste wines from anywhere in the world, and you have 24 minutes to identify 6 wines down to the vineyard and the vintage if possible. You're also grilled for about 90 minutes on all things wine, spirits, cocktail, beer, sake, water, you name it, because historically the role of the sommelier was to serve all of your liquid beverages and also prep your cigar at the end of the meal. But since we don't allow that in the United States, it's no longer part of the examination process. And then of course you have service, which is, just really kind of seeing your skills, your salesmanship skills, service technique, all of that, how you pair food and wine, which I think is one of the most overlooked but most important role of the sommelier, especially in a restaurant situation. So all 3 of those parts combine, and if you pass them all, you do get to walk away with the Master Sommelier diploma. So wouldn't want to try and do it again, but I'm really glad that I took the time to do it. And, it's been really great, just like Zoe said, to, kind of see this development of a language and certifications start to appear in the beer industry, in the cheese industry. And it is so important to have a dialogue and language that you can relate to people. And I think that's really what the Court of Master Sommeliers started out to do back in the late 60s, was to develop that dialogue so that we could better communicate to our customers and ultimately make the right recommendations for them. So a little bit about me.
Pauline, tell us about the art and the ways of being a chocolatier or being a chocolate expert.
Yes, so at Valrhona, we are really focused on the quality of our chocolate and the profile of the chocolate. And for that, we do have internal expert panel. So testing chocolate every day to assess the quality of our cocoa beans we receive, but also for the development of the new recipes, or to assess the quality of our final product. And to be part of this expert panel, it took 6 months to 1 year of training. So how it works, by testing a lot of chocolate, which is very difficult, every day, and to train to recognize some flavors step by step and to align with the panel, the expert panel. And besides of that, same as you, we are also testing a lot with our customers, even developing specific recipes with them. So trying to share together about the profile and how to describe a chocolate, to be sure that we are talking the same language, we can say. Yeah.
Those of you that don't know me, I'm American Cheese Society Certified Cheese Professional and CCSE as well, Court of Master Sommelier. I'm not certified in chocolate, but I love chocolate. So that can count for a little bit. All right. So we have a fun excursion today because we have 4 cheeses from Jasper Hill Farm. We have 4 chocolates from Valrhona, and we have Gillian's wonderful Treasury Estates portfolio to work through today. So we're going to go ahead and start off with cheese, because since that is kind of like what we're pairing to, there's always that question, do I eat the cheese first? Do I drink the wine? Do I eat the chocolate? Well, we all believe that they go to the same place, but the sensory change will be different. When you start off with one, it'll change the other. So each one is going to get changes through there. And, you know, you hear the thing as I have the perfect pairing. Because everybody's palate is different. Some people love Brussels sprouts. Some people don't like them because of bitterness, all those things. The only perfect pairing that you get is yours, you know, what you like. And so as much as we could endeavor to say, I love the way that these work, I really like this, I think this would go really well, it might work well for us. But, you know, again, you might want to say, it'll go better with this or it'll be better with that. We have the opportunity also to kind of cross over and taste different things as we're going along, but we'll try to stay true with the direction that we're going. So we're going to start off with Zoe with the first cheese. And we're basically, she's going to start and talk about Harbison, right?
Correct. Okay, we've got Harbison here. So Harbison is a bloomy rind cheese. So you can see that it has this soft white rind, which you might find familiar looking if you've ever had a brie. Brie is the most popular bloomy rind cheese, just like champagne comes to mind first when we're talking about sparkling white wine. So we often sort of just casually refer to all of these cheeses as a brie style, but in the industry would be more likely to say bloomy rind. And it's because the flora that we're cultivating on the surface of this cheese literally blooms as it forms in the cave. So we would add the cultures to the milk, make the cheese. They're rubbery and firm when they're first made. We put them in a special temperature and humidity controlled vault. And if we got all of our make targets right, then we've created the perfect surface for the white Penicillium candidum flora to grow. It's in the mushroom family. And it imparts an interesting mushroomy flavor while it softens the texture of the cheese. So as I mentioned, it starts off sort of firm and bland and rubbery. And as that rind forms over time, you get a soft, gooey texture. You see Michael there scooping out the inside. And he's got it just right. That's exactly what I do. I stuck a knife under the surface of this rind and sort of filleted it back. So you kind of create a natural dish. And so the thing I haven't mentioned yet is how this is standing up straight on its own, which is a strip of spruce bark. So this is harvested from local trees, and it's literally the inner layer of a spruce tree. So we scrape off the rough outer bark, make an incision, we peel off what looks like leather. And it's this very aromatic, flexible material that they would use a long time ago. I think this practice originated in the Jura Mountains to keep the cheese sort of girdled. So it creates a natural dish. As the cheese softens, it won't puddle and run away from you. And then also it imparts a beautiful woodsy nuance. It sometimes comes across as mustardy, and other times it's like what an oak barrel will do to a white wine. You get vanillin, more richness, butteriness, complexity, really. And we've designed Harbison. It's a pasteurized cheese because we have to sell it young in this country, but we worked with our French friends who developed a culture blend to mimic the flavor of a raw milk camembert in a pasteurized cheese. So we're really, with a pasteurized cheese, we're able to make a very deliberate complexity, whereas with the raw milk cheeses that we make that we'll try later, it's more like revealing the natural character of the milk and the animals in the land, more terroir driven approach. But this should be a younger wheel, might still be a little bit firm, sweet, creamy, raspberry notes. And as it becomes ripe, you're getting more roasted green vegetables, garlic, and cream, definitely, with those like maybe mustardy, woodsy notes layered on top.
So Gillian, tell us about the wine we paired.
Sure. So I thought that the Stag's Leap Winery Chardonnay really paired well with this cheese. I hope everyone is in agreement. Of course, it's subjective entirely. But the good thing about the Stag's Leap Winery Chardonnay is, well, we're sourcing the fruit from kind of cooler, more southern parts of Carneros and southern Napa Valley, so that we have some really nice bright fruit. There's only about 25% new French oak on this wine. The rest is stainless steel and neutral barrel. So it is subtly oaked, which, you know, I thought was a very nice compliment, because I think if the Chardonnay maybe were too oaky, it might overpower some of those really beautiful, delicate, nutty kind of nuances that Zoe was describing in this cheese. And this also has some pretty bright acidity too, which I really like, to contrast the decadent creaminess of the Harbison as well. In terms of the milk chocolate, I found this to be kind of the I don't know, softest, right? The creamiest of the offerings, and I do think that that it works really beautifully with the Harbison, as well as the Chardonnay.
I think that the Harbison brings out more of the fruit and takes away that little bit of acidity, and that oakiness just blends in really well with the rind, with the way that the spruce is in there, and they really kind of balance out. I thought a little bit about the oak, but I think that that birch is coming out, which is fabulous. What do you think, Zoe?
Nailed it, Gillian. I love oaked whites, particularly nicely acidic and not too oaky Chardonnays with Harbison. Like if I were to describe the ideal pairing on paper, this is it. And I agree with Michael. They balance each other. The intensity is a nice match. One doesn't sort of win on the palate when you've cleared your palate. It's they sort of finish out together, holding hands. Mm-hmm. And the oak and the bark do cool aromatic affinity things. You get something you notice more in each than together than you did when you try them individually.
So Pauline, tell us about the chocolate so we can get to that.
Yes. So for this cheese, we selected the Jivara 40% chocolate, which is really the iconic milk chocolate of Valrhona. Yeah, exactly this one. It's really well balanced between the cocoa notes and the milky notes, with also at the end some vanilla, nuts, and barley malt notes as well, and really not too sweet for a milk chocolate, we can say. And it's pairing very well with the Harbison, because from the cheese, you do have like some juniper, woody, smoky notes from the bark. And those notes are like balanced with the nuts and barley notes from the chocolate. And so for me, it's really like a powerful and a remarkable pairing, bringing up like a uncommon flavor and in the chocolate and in the cheese. And it's really highlighting spices notes from the cheese and from the chocolate. So yes, a very surprising and nice pairing.
Gillian, tell us your thoughts here.
With regards to the chocolate and cheese?
Chocolate, cheese, wine, all together?
I mean, it's unique, like I said, and I totally agree with Pauline. Like the Jivara is, it's so mellow, it's not overly sweet or overly bitter, and I think it just kind of stands alongside really nicely. I thought it was great with the cheese, and for me, I didn't use any bread or crackers or anything, but I think a little crusty bread, I'm picturing just like being out in a vineyard somewhere with this chocolate, the cheese, the bread, a little bit of this lovely wine, and just making a meal out of that.
Zoe, your thoughts on all three?
Yes, but you've painted the scene. I can bring myself there in my mind. I like the notes from Pauline about the warm spice flavors finding each other with the cheese and the chocolate. Those two together, it's like the saltiness of the cheese and those funky garlicky notes are totally mellowed out by that chocolate. And by the way, this is a lovely milk chocolate. I often don't gravitate towards them because they can be cloying, but this certainly is very well balanced in and of itself. So together, it reminds me of some sort of like mousse, a milk chocolate mousse. And I'm happy for the acidity of the wine. I think I'm kind of looking for that to kind of cleanse the palate after such a rich bite together.
Pauline, you have anything else to say about the wine, the chocolate, and the cheese together?
No, indeed, the wine will bring some acidity and freshness to this pairing. So still very interesting.
Yeah, I find it just blends all well together. There isn't a conflict at all. And I think that's a lot of times when you look at a pairing, you know, what does it do? Well, you know, the chocolate is the chocolate. It pretty much stays the same. You really don't get any variance from that. The wine and the cheese kind of help each other bring themselves up a little bit. So I think that actually, when you put the wine and the cheese together, it can actually stand up to your beautiful chocolate just a little bit more because it's pretty powerful. It's got a nice sweetness to it, but not overpowering. And you know, it's like what Zoe said, kind of like a chocolate mousse. You know, very, very, very nice. Yeah. All right. Any other comments you'd like to make before we move on to our next adventure? All right.
Do it.
All right, Zoe, you're up.
Okay. So Willoughby is the next cheese that we're going to try. And this is a sister cheese to Harbison. They're made in the same creamery from the same milk source. And they're both, the process is really similar and they end up with a very similar texture. But as you can see, the Willoughby, we dialed down the moisture content a little bit so that it doesn't need that spruce bark to hold it up straight. It's usually able to stand up on its own. Although I do like an extra ripe Willoughby that's starting to sort of crack at the edges and give way. That's a good sign for me. I have a Willoughby in front of me. I'll get the crinkles out of here, sorry. That is a little bit young. That's a good sign from where I'm standing, which means we're keeping up with sales, but sometimes it's hard for me to wrangle a perfectly ripe piece because we try to get them out into the world before they reach that point. So this looks very pillowy. It looks almost bloomy. There's some white flora on the surface of the cheese, which is not unusual. But the main difference, besides it being a little less soft than the Harbison here, is that it's a washed rind cheese. So we're literally, instead of allowing that white flora, which is all over our caves, it's ever present. Even if we didn't inoculate the milk, it's going to grow on whatever cheese is in those caves. It's a very ubiquitous and aggressive rind colonizer, and thankfully it's beautiful too. But for the wash rind cheeses, we're actively trying to discourage the flora, the white fluff, the vertical growing things, and encourage a community of microbes that are sticky and kind of tacky and orange, and they can range in color from peachy to almost like hot pink. And the flavor profile, instead of going in that mushroomy vegetal direction like a bloomy rind will, the wash rind family, this is like the stinky cheese family. So think French Epoisse or Limburger from like Bavaria. Really, we think of it from being from Wisconsin, where those traditions landed. The aroma of the cheese from the outside on the rind is very earthy, almost like suede. You get like clean barn aromas, so a little animal-y. And it's it doesn't always remind us of a food smell. Maybe roasted meat, especially lamb or goat, something like that. This is a cow's milk cheese. So when you on the palate though, the flavors tend to be much more mellow and less assertive than on the nose. So we like to say the bark is worse than the bite. You might not think you're going to enjoy it from what it smells like when you're just unwrapping it. But like I said, on the palate, you pick up more peachy, fruity cream notes, and those animal-y flavors come across oftentimes more as like very pleasant cured meat, like prosciutto or speck, smoky cured meat flavors. This is also a pasteurized cheese, and it's on the milder side, depending on the ripeness.
So Gillian, we chose the Shiraz. We want to talk about that?
We are now in the Southern Hemisphere. So Stag's Leap Winery is in Napa Valley. Penfolds is located in South Australia, just outside of Adelaide. Winery that's been producing amazing wine since 1844, when Dr. Penfolds moved over from the UK and established a medical practice. He actually started in the wine business by making medicinal tinctures out of wine, fortifying wine juice and curing all kinds of things, insomnia, dysentery, you name it. People were coming over on long ship journeys, so these medical tinctures actually made Dr. Penfolds quite famous. Fast forward to the 1950s, where we see a transition from the fortified sweet sticky stuff into still red wine production. Part of that was the purchase of the Kalimna vineyard. So this is our Kalimna Shiraz. We're now sourcing from different locations, Barossa Valley being the main primary source, and the Kalimna vineyard is located within the Barossa Valley. It's home to some of the oldest Cabernet Sauvignon vines in the world, because phylloxera never made it to that part of the Barossa Valley. So we have ungrafted 150-year-old Cabernet Sauvignon there. But what I find to be some really cool similarities between this variety and the Willoughby is that that meaty note, right? Shiraz definitely has a kind of a peppery, somewhat camphor or eucalyptus type of aromatic, also very savory. And I think that that really plays to the Willoughby cheese quite well. Those savory, almost like kind of black olive characteristics too. We don't use a lot of new oak on this wine. There is some old American oak hogshead barrels that this wine is fermented in that to me give, again, just a slight kind of greenish, maybe like a dill type of aroma and flavor profile. But I think really honing in on that, the kind of the meaty, savory characteristics of the Shiraz when pairing with the Willoughby is pretty phenomenal.
You know, with typically the wine can have some real robust flavors to it, and this has a nice balance to the flavor of the wine, and the wine does not overpower. There's a nice balance between that. What do you think, Zoe?
Yes, I was skeptical to be honest, because my wheel especially is on the young side, and so it's not as assertive as it could be. And then I think of Shiraz like with those spicy notes being more bold, so I didn't think it would be a good intensity match, but actually they held their own with each other rather nicely. And I love the, as you were saying, like briny olive, black olive, and dill. Those really jumped out to me as I was tasting along. I thought it really punched up the suede characteristic of the cheese. I got that like earthy animal note in a very pleasant way. Whereas on the palate, I wasn't noticing that as much before I tried it with the wine. So pleasantly surprised. Thumbs up. Nice.
Pauline, tell us about your chocolate.
Yes, so for this one, we selected Guanaja, 70% chocolate, which is our same iconic dark chocolate from Valrhona. So this one is a blend of more than 7 different origins of cocoa, meaning we will have a very complex profile. So at the beginning of the testing, we have a little bit of acidity, some fruity notes, and then going for more toasted, roasted cocoa, which is named cocoa nibs. And we can say an elegant bitterness that will last after taste. And so with this cheese, it was very interesting because it gives also a complex pairing, because we have the buttery notes of the cheese that will contrast with the strong cocoa notes of the chocolate. But on the other side, we will have the peat and roasted meat from the cheese you mentioned that are going along with the nibs and toasted cocoa from the chocolate. And you mentioned it for the wine as well. It enhances the camphor notes, so the black olives notes we can have from the chocolate as well. So bringing a little bit of freshness as well. So it's really balanced between similarities of some notes and contrast on some other. And with the wine, I will say it brings a little bit more complexity to this pairing, but still going along with the notes of cocoa and of nibs. So yeah, interesting one and a complex pairing, I will say.
This is fantastic. The chocolate brings like a dark cherry to everything.
Yeah.
So with the cheese, you get butter and cherry, and with the wine, you get the dark fruit and the cherry, and then you put them together and you get butter, chocolate, and the fruit together. And that's just fantastic. It's just, Gillian, what's your input?
Yeah, I just, I want to say I've loved Valrhona chocolate for so many years, and these bars really do serve as a reminder of just the quality, right? And I before I tasted the wine, I kind of let chocolate sort of sit on my palate, warm up a little bit, and just kind of melt.
Exactly.
And really got so many more nuances and complexities out of it that way. But then when I tried the wine too, I like it brought out more of the fruitiness of the wine, whereas the cheese kind of coasted alongside in terms of picking up all the savory stuff. But then you're right, Michael, you put it all together and it's a pretty awesome combination.
Zoe?
All right, you took my note on like the cherry chocolate, with Willoughby. The chocolate, by the way, is beautiful. 70% can sometimes start to become unpalatable for me because it can be, bitter or astringent, almost like tannic. And this is very smooth, very palatable, just easy to eat all by itself. And with the cheese, it really changed the cheese compared to what was happening with just the wine. So it was brought in my mind to those like little cordial cherry truffles that you get at the holidays, where they're
Exactly.
dark chocolate with the little maraschino in the middle. And it punched up the fruit of the wine. And it really took the whole experience away from the briny olive direction. And that camphor note came through almost as just like a minty impression from the combination of all three. So I thought it was successful. Again, the intensities melded well. I would say the cheese was in a supporting role with all three, for better or worse. You maybe don't want the washed rind character of the cheese to be dominant when you're trying it with the chocolate and the wine. So I think in a good way, the cheese sort of laid back a little bit and just added a creamy depth to tie things together.
I think that those that are hesitant of using a washed rind cheese, this is a good example of how it can transform into a supporting character and bring all these flavors together without actually sticking its nose in and being overpowering. it's a nice balance. It really brought, I got so much butter out of it. And really, the structure, without the structure, it wouldn't have stood up to these flavors. If you would have had something that was more buttery and less strong, it would have just they would have just run it over and we wouldn't have tasted it. So that's my thought on it. Pauline?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of you, we can say. Yeah, it's a pairing, as you said, like with a lot of structure from the cheese, from the wine, and from the chocolate.
Great. All right. So another really nice pairing. Really enjoyed that. So Zoe, let's go ahead and let's step up to the Highlander. I really love this cheese. And I think I tasted it last time we were together, which was almost 2 years ago. And it's just gotten better since then.
Takes a few years to fully realize a cheese, especially a harder cheese like this that ages 6 to 8 months. You make a little change and then you need to patiently wait, if you can, to see the manifestation of those adjustments before you go and change something else, or then it becomes difficult to know which adjustments are showing up in what way in the final product. So Highlander here is a mountain style cheese that we say it's raw milk. So we're using a very low amount of like commercial cultures, and we're really letting the native flora of the milk show itself here. It's 50% cow and 50% goat milk. So this is a really exciting development for us. We partnered 50-50 with a young couple with a lot of goat farming experience. We're cow people, so we always were hoping to have a goat's milk cheese in our collection at some point, but we weren't ready to bring on goats into our world. And so that partnership has been really wonderful for us. Goat milk tends to be leaner, so less fatty and even like lower protein. So just a little less rich than cow's milk, but very aromatic, right? Some people are huge fans of goat milk and aroma. Some people are a little bit more wary. I like a goat tome, and especially a blended milk, as an entry point to goat's milk. It's not as maybe gamey as like a soft ripened or a fresh chev could be sometimes. So the aromatic of the goat with the richness of the cow, I think, balance each other really well. It's hard to get a creamy, dense, pliant texture like this from goat's milk alone. So the cow's milk is like rounding that out and adding that richness in the body. This is based on a mountain style cheese, as I mentioned, which means it's a cooked pressed recipe. So when they're trying to hurry up and make a whole vat of milk from cow's milk on the side of the Alps in a wooden hut before refrigeration technology, they'd make one cheese from each milking. And in order to kind of get the milk in and out of that copper cauldron, they would build a fire beneath the vat, and cooking the curds would help shrink them up and dry them down, so you could have a nice firm cheese that would age slowly and keep food in the larder through the winter. But the cooking process also imparts some like Maillard reaction flavors, so like some caramelization or meatiness in a way that you wouldn't get if you hadn't cooked the curds. So sort of twofold. And that fast make means that you retain a lot of the calcium. The more acidic your make is, the longer your make, the more lactose you turn into lactic acid, the more you dissolve away the calcium. And the calcium is what gives you that beautiful bendy texture before you'll see a short break. So a quick cooked make means that you have a beautiful elasticity and that very creamy mouthfeel, as opposed to, say, a cheddar, which is a longer, more acidic make with that crumbly texture. So kind of two ends of the firm cheese spectrum. So Highlander, I would say the closest comparison to a European cheese would be maybe a raclette, the classic cheese that you're meant to heat up the surface with an iron from the fire and scrape the melty, bubbly surface onto a plate of steamed potatoes served with cornichon, pickles, and charcuterie. So really nice paired with something acidic. Pickles bring that to the party, and especially cured meats, that like meaty thing. So in the cheese itself, you get big nuttiness. So think like chestnut nuttiness, roasty flavors. You get that meaty gaminess like a lamb chop next to the bone, or in this case, a goat chop, I suppose. And then the butteriness, the richness from the cow's milk. So This to me tastes like a raw milk cheese. There's some wildness to it too. A little bit of little spicy. It's definitely, like Michael said, it's a work in progress, but it's been really fun to see this, the character of this cheese evolve over time. I'd love to see how the pairings go here.
All right. Gillian, let's talk about the Pinot Noir.
Let's do it. I mean, Pinot Noir is so, I think, elegant. I love the texture of this Pinot. It's very silky, which I think does kind of play a little bit to that crystallization of the cheese. And there's just some really beautiful kind of subtle cherry notes, some delicate floral notes that, again, I think really do play to this cheese quite well. This is a winery that was started in 1982 in focusing on Carneros, so focusing on cooler climate Pinot Noir and Chardonnay production. Of course, not as cool as Burgundy. So there is some body and weight and texture to this wine. But I like also sort of those, like I said, floral notes, lots of nice dark cherry and pomegranate. And I really love this combination. I thought it worked very, very well together, but I'm a Pinot Noir fanatic, so there's very little that I don't like Pinot with. But it's certainly also kind of the earthiness of it really plays to those slightly mushroomy notes and nutty notes. We typically harvest this fruit in early September, and everything is done in open top fermentation after a little cold soaking to get some nice color out. There's a little bit of stem inclusion to give us, you know, kind of that idea of grip. And I think also that's really softened quite well by this cheese. So yeah, it's 10 months in relatively neutral oak. We're not trying to over oak. We really just want the Pinot Noir to kind of be the showcase and really carry the footprint of the cooler climate Carneros growing region.
Wow, the wine's spectacular. So is the cheese. You know, this is when I think of a Pinot Noir, this is exactly what I think of as a Pinot Noir. There's you know, some nice earthiness through here. There's some nice fruit. There's some, you know, just some great flavors. And I was thinking about the way that this would come together, and there's a nice meld. You know, I think that this provides some backbone for the wine and almost a little bit of a structure. I just really like the way that it doesn't interfere with the fruitiness or the flavors of the wine. The wine doesn't overpower the cheese, and the cheese comes out. So you get a nice balance of the flavors. Zoe, your thought on that?
I'm a cold climate gal. If I could ski 6 months of the year, I'd be happy. And I've learned that I always tend to enjoy cold climate wine. So while I might not always be able to articulate exactly what I'm looking for, if I have a somm or a winemonger, we'll say, that's how I help them steer me in the right direction. So I love this wine. It is elegant. I'm glad that Gillian likes it, because I think in this case, the cheese has slightly more intensity than the wine. So sometimes it's like, depends on who you ask, right? And if the cheese loses the battle, you know, I might not be as favorable, but I'm glad to hear that she also enjoyed it, because I thought that they worked really well together, and that the cheese's character sort of lasted through that pairing with a red wine. It's often easier to pair white wines with cheeses, so I'm really pleased so far with how well this has ended up going. So thumbs up here. I think it's not sweet. The combination of the two isn't sweet, although there are some of those subtle caramelized notes in the cheese, but it's reminding me of like a buckwheat honey. It's bringing out some of that, like the earthy, fruity notes.
Yeah. So Pauline, tell us about the chocolate.
Yes. So the next chocolate is Dulcey chocolate, 32%. It's quite an untypical chocolate. It's not a dark, not a milk, not a white. It's a blonde chocolate, which was quite a big innovation in the chocolate world, we can say. So basically, what is Dulcey? It's a white chocolate that has been eating up one night by a chef, and it becomes like a white caramelized chocolate. After it took years from our R&D to work on it and to have it consistent. So the recipe is like a white, but you have this very nice, we can say, golden color, and on the profile, you do have like biscuity, caramel notes, hint of salt as well at the end, and the same, not too sweet. So with the Highlander, it was very interesting because there is a lot of similarities. So Zoe, you mentioned the chestnut nuts, the butter, the caramel as well. And so it's all going along with the chocolate, with the biscuity notes, with the caramel nuts, the vanilla a little bit as well. So for me, it's really a combination of warm flavors from both and like very comforting pairing.
Wow. Gillian, your thoughts on all three?
The white chocolate's a little sweet for the Pinot, but I love white chocolate so much. I love the silky, buttery texture of it. So for me, it was more of a textural match, really, than like, but all together, when you have the kind of the savory complexities of the cheese, it makes the sweetness of the white chocolate a little more subtle. And, I'm quite pleased with how the three worked together. Definitely. And, you know, I agree with you, Zoe. I one of my first wine director jobs after Windows on the World was at Pauline, where I worked with Max McKelman and also learned in a world where everyone was pairing red wine with cheese, how much better white wines do pair. But I think that, you know, the subtle characteristics of the Pinot really do work quite beautifully with this. I would even like this Pinot Noir to be a few years older, maybe having some, you know, tertiary kind of cool, interesting bottle bouquet going on, but it's a pretty young, fresh Pinot Noir. But I think an older version of this would be also quite interesting to see.
Well, you know, when we talk about the pairings, there's variations. I mean, we can go well, you know, more robust or less, or any one of those directions. And I think that when you talk about the base of the Highlander and the Pinot Noir and the chocolate, the way that they work together, I think there's a nice symmetry along the way. You know, I could see that what you're talking about the wine being a little bit more, because the chocolate does have a lot of caramel. There's a lot of really richness in there, and that has a tendency to take point. But again, what Zoe said before is that the supporting point of this is that you have the wine and you have the cheese. So sometimes, you know, you do get one that does stand out a little bit more. And then this is a good example of, we have a little bit more chocolate standing out. So you probably could go a little bit more robust, you know, in your wine, in your choices. But again, you know, it all depends on what direction that you want to end up in the first place, or where you started.
You can play with proportions too. So I have sort of like a 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 proportion of the chocolate to the cheese. that was just enough to sort of take that earthy edge off the cheese a little bit. It just has natural bitter notes that you might not notice, but especially as pairing with red wines, those can kind of bob to the top. So I thought it sort of, if you get the proportions just right, kind of like mellow that cheese profile, and then the, you know, and then the pairing still works with the wine. It was fun anyway.
Well, I think that's something that needs to be considered on all of these, is that how much of the flavors that you put in. You know, sometimes just a little bit goes a long way, and we have to kind of keep that in mind, that you know, especially with this particular chocolate, it does have a lot of power to it, but in the right proportion, it is really wonderful. Pauline, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we do have a lot of similarities between the cheese and the chocolate. And on the other hand, the fruitiness and earthiness of the wine, of the Pinot, is still going very well along with it, even if it's a little bit different, because none of them will overwhelm the others. So at the end, it's all well balanced.
Wonderful. That was a really nice pairing. Let's go ahead and get to our last and final pairing, which before we started, I have to tell you that I had a question for Zoe, is what she was doing with her trophies. And the reason for that is that they won 2 years ago, because we didn't have any competition last year, at the International Cheese Awards. This cheese, Bayley Hazen, took the Reserve Supreme Champion at the show, and she got 2 ginormous sterling silver trophies that actually have not left England since something like 1892, something like that. The first time Americans have ever won that. And so she has 2 of those trophies, and it attributes to the quality and richness that you think about. She competed against all of the European cheeses, against even American cheeses, and ended up being not only better, but also the second best cheese in the entire world. So, Zoe, that's
According to British judges, we'll take that. In Stilton country, yeah.
exactly.
Right?
And we're always looking for silver linings, right, over the last year, for heaven's sakes. And yeah, getting to keep those sweet trophies around the office in our creamery another year is one of those. So Bayley Hazen Blue is one of the first cheeses that we made at Jasper Hill. Also a raw milk cheese, so focused on you know, managing our pastures, managing our cows and our milking practices to protect the milk and its attributes, and to make the most delicious, balanced cheese we possibly can. So Bayley Hazen Blue is known as, I think, being stylistically more similar to Stilton than others. Yep. And another attribute about Bayley that's pretty common is that there's a lot of white space. As with good graphic design, there's, I think a blue cheese benefits from a good balance of blue and white. And you'll also know these, notice these like veins that are sort of prominent depending on where you cut your piece. And that a lot of times people assume that we're injecting the blue mold, because that's exactly what that looks like. But we mix the blue mold cultures in with the milk, and then we spike the fresh cheeses with stainless steel spikes, and that allows oxygen to get in, and blue mold needs oxygen to grow. Blue flora, we'll say, a little more marketable term. So if you don't spike a wheel, it stays completely white, and then it's like sort of chalky and feta-like and sort of boring at the end. But if you properly aerate your cheese and you build a cheese with nice pockets of air and openness, it's very difficult. It's like making a surface ripened, soft ripened cheese from the inside out. You are encouraging your flora to grow and be the ripening agent, but you need it to grow inside. Blue mold, blue flora is very, it needs oxygen, but like a small amount less than what's in the normal air. And so you create these little crevices where it can flourish, and it softens the cheese. It adds that complexity. And I mentioned the white space. This keeps it balanced. It should be cheesy and toasty and nutty first, and then you get the subtle anise spice characters second. So it should not be too overwhelming. Metallic, bitter, spicy, peppery can be where, you know, more assertive blue cheeses land. This should be more of an entry level. It's big flavors, complex flavors, but balanced in terms of those like spicy notes. So we'll take that Reserve Supreme Champion moniker and be proud of that for a long time. Just got to find an engraver to put our name on that trophy without messing it up. So that's my next challenge.
I was funny because I was there and I accepted the award for them, and I said, well, you know what, I'm flying back. I'll take the trophies with me. And he's like, they're valued about 60,000 each, so you might not want to take them through immigration and customs. I'm like, oh, okay, I won't. All right. So this is what I would consider to be one of the most palatable, easy to eat snacking blue cheeses. It's just got so much cream, so much flavor that, you know, a lot of times you have that saltiness or that tanginess that gets in the way. This has a nice balance of both. So Gillian, let's talk about the Cabernet Sauvignon.
Sure, and I couldn't agree with you more. This is, for me, just the right amount of blue. Just like you said, just that delicious snackability, right? The cheeses, the Cabrales of the world and things like that, those are, you know, a little, I think, very pungent for any kind of wine pairing. I might even almost go towards an ale of some sort, but this is our Beringer Knights Valley Cabernet Sauvignon that I think works quite well with this cheese. You know, I love that the tannins, they are there, but they're not too drying. They're a little kind of, I think, very well integrated into the wine. We don't use a lot of new oak or heavy toast barrels on this, so that intentionally when you pull the cork on this wine, you can enjoy it right away. That's not to say this wine doesn't cellar. We tasted 2 weeks ago this wine back to 1974, the very first vintage of this wine, and they were all so fresh and delicious. Knights Valley is a very, very small growing region in Sonoma County that butts right up against Napa, so very similar in terms of the climate and also the success over the years with Bordeaux varietals. So this is Cabernet Sauvignon with a little bit of Merlot to kind of soften the tannins, a little bit of Cabernet Franc for some beautiful fragrance, some Malbec, and a hint of Petit Verdot as well. So you know, I love this wine. It's one of my favorites in the portfolio because it drinks like a much more expensive wine. This actually retails for anywhere, depending on where you are in the country, between $25 and $30 a bottle. So that's a lot of wine for the money. I love, again, the salty, blue, crunchy kind of texture of this cheese with the Knights Valley as the backdrop. I think it's a pretty wonderful pairing.
Cabernet Sauvignon and blue cheese is one of my favorites. I really enjoy that, and this is no exception. You really get that the wine takes the cheese into a creaminess that's just so rich, and the flavors bring out more of the butter, the cream, and that back little area of earthiness. It blends, I think, really well with the fruit and also with a little bit of the oakiness. Zoe, your thoughts?
All right. Yes, I would, to go back to the texture notes, I think the whole thing for me is velvety, like red velvet. The soft tannins, that fudgy texture of the cheese, they come together in a very harmonious way. especially my piece here is on the lower blue side. And so it's, again, I'm surprised because I don't normally gravitate towards this in my head. I would maybe for a white go with a port or sauterne, but for a wine that is not at all sweet, usually some off dry character helps round out blue cheese, which tends to be quite salty and sometimes a little bit bitter. But this pairing doesn't need sweetness to work, which is surprising to me. So I'm sort of confounded and happy over here.
Great. Pauline, tell us about the chocolate.
Yeah, so for this one, we selected Opalys, 33%, which is a white chocolate with a very light colors. And it's really a taste of fresh milk and vanilla. So a good balance between both, not too sweet. And the texture is interesting also because it's very smooth, velvety as well. With this blue cheese, what is interesting is that the white chocolate will really enhance the creamy taste of this cheese, but also keeping along the powerful blue character of the cheese, giving really a white balance, a good balance between both. So we really have a smooth and a delicate pairing between both. And it's true that usually we recommend dark chocolate with blue cheese because they are both very powerful, very strong. But it was very interesting with this one, the way it was highlighting the creamy side of both. Yeah.
I've never tried a white chocolate and a blue and our Bayley before. It is very interesting, and it's what I would want to end a meal with. You know, it's almost like putting a little sea salt on a dessert, which I just love. You know, it's helpful to the chocolate and the cheese together. But if you guys want to get a little crazy and break Michael's script, trying the 70% with the Bayley is also one of the most unexpected pairings. You know, sounds like you're familiar with the magic that can happen with blue cheese and dark chocolate. It's not something you'd normally think of, but it's like it can do some interesting things.
Gillian?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I'm just having a blast over here, just trying all the different combinations. I do really love kind of the caramel notes in this chocolate. It's
as well.
Absolutely addictive and does really play to the savoriness of the blue cheese quite beautifully. And I just think that you have all of these different flavors and textures in play. Like this is a whole party right here in one sitting, you know, where you can just, how many different flavor combinations can we produce out of 4 cheeses, 4 beautiful chocolates and 4 beautiful wines? I mean, the combinations really are endless. And that I think kind of hopefully speaks a little bit to the versatility of the wines. But also to the utterly spectacular quality of the cheeses and the chocolates all together. So yeah, not a bad Friday.
Not at all, not at all. You know, you know, sitting here and waiting kind of for the effect of the cheese, the chocolate and the wine to kind of take in and kind of sit down and really absorb that, because my first impression was it was kind of like nice, but it wasn't overpowering or anything or that exciting. But sitting here and letting it sink in, and all of a sudden you start feeling or you start tasting or getting that richness that's coming in. This is an exceptional pairing. There's a spiciness that comes out of the blue that wasn't there before. That's really nice. It's kind of like a white pepper hit for me. And then the the chocolate brings out a little bit more of the that caramel that's coming in there. And then the wine, I really pick up a little bit of that structural oak in that just comes out and kind of brings everything together. It's really nice. But I have to say is that it's also, you know, any one of these combinations can kind of work together. There's so many different flavors that we like and we have preferences for. Like Zoe said, she really likes dark chocolates with this, and to switch them out, I think is really fun because there's always that, you know, where we look at the ability to be able to say, well, this is what we've always done. We really like it this way. We put this with this and this goes with this, but trying something a little different, you know, being able to try these four together and then separately is really a lot of fun. And I know that Zoe has rarely ever stayed on any of my direction. And I love that about her because she does find, and you know, you go through there as you're tasting, you notice that something you might want to add in. We talk about that is like one of the pairings, the Pinot Noir. You could have something a little bit more. So could we oomph it up a little bit and put in the Cab instead of the Pinot Noir? Absolutely. I think it would work really well. So what's your favorite pairing today? And let's stick to what we actually tasted, and then we can shift to something that you would like to dream about. So Gillian, what's your, which one did you like the most?
I think I love very creamy, bloomy rind cheeses. So I really liked the Harbison pairing with the Chardonnay.
Pauline?
I will say the same. I will go with the Chardonnay and the Jivara chocolate and the Harbison because it's maybe the more uncommon pairing with a lot of complexity. So this one was very interesting.
Zoe?
I'm on the second lineup. So the Penfolds, the 70%, and the Willoughby. That was the most surprising to me. And I was the most skeptical of it. And I think it ended up being my favorite.
I think that I would probably myself go with the Bayley Hazen. I like the richness that you get through. I like the creaminess. I think I have an affinity to the blues, but also the cabs and blues. And then adding in the chocolate was just a really nice balance of flavors for me. So did you try something that you would like to say that was, you know, off the charts here that you took away from this? You know, you dug into something else, Gillian?
Yeah, I'm with Zoe with the surprise of the Kalimna Shiraz and the Willoughby. I thought that was again, not a pairing that you would even think of entertaining. So, you know, I sent the wines out a little late. So I was trying to come up with varietals that were pretty classic, but, you know, obviously the quality of the cheeses and the chocolates is, you know, resounding. And although I might have had some different combinations, like I wish my company carried a champagne, but we don't. But I really was very pleasantly surprised with the versatility of the Kalimna and kind of showing off the Willoughby.
Pauline?
Yeah, sometimes chocolate and cheese, we don't know exactly what to expect on the pairing. And so I was very pleasantly surprised as well to have such a nice pairing between all of them. And yeah, as you said, a lot of possibilities. So we can try all the combination possible and have nice things coming up. Just a choice depending on what you like after and what you prefer.
Zoe, you're take away from a different one?
My off script, thank you. I
Off
try
script.
really hard to stay with the plan, you know me. I swapped out the Bayley Hazen Blue for the Willoughby in the second lineup. So the Penfolds Shiraz, the 70%, but then with the Bayley Hazen Blue. And I thought that worked almost as well or better than the Willoughby. And I found that it brought out those warm spice notes in the blue cheese, those like anise, fennel-y, almost black licorice-y characters in a really great way. And the intensities matched well. So that was my off the cuff cross pairing suggestion. And I would just hope that anyone today who participated here is inspired to play like this, to get a couple friends together now that that's like, we're getting to the place where that's normal again, grabbing sort of a 3, 3, and 3 and trying different combinations and talking through what works best, because that's how you develop the vocabulary, is by tasting with others, whether it's in a formal setting or not, and just talking through like what you're experiencing and tasting in a no judgment zone. So this was really fun. It was very unique. I've never done this triple lineup before. So thank you so much for putting it together. This is cool.
My pleasure. All right. So what I want to say is that you can actually get these products and do this tasting yourself. Now, sometimes you might not be able to find this vintage or this Syrah or this Cab, but look at it kind of that direction that, you know, you have some flexibility, especially on the wines and all that. But you can go to Valrhona. Pauline, you want to tell them how they can get these 4 chocolates?
Yes, quite easy. So you can go to us.valrhona.com and you're going to find all the product, and you can also find them on Amazon as well. So very easy to order if you want.
And Zoe, you have them in e-commerce as well?
Absolutely, yes. Everything here is available in our web shop, jasperhillfarm.com/shop. But also, if you have an independent retailer or a Whole Foods counter with a cheesemonger nearby, we always love to see you guys hunting for cheese out in the wild, because you're going to find a monger who's going to walk you through what your preferences are and match you up with the perfect cheese from some artisan producer, whether or not it's Jasper Hill. So.
Well, for Gillian, you are very fortunate because just about everybody carries your wines around the country. So you'll be able to go in anywhere and be able to pick these fabulous wines up.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, they have some pretty good visibility out there.
Yes, they do. So, so I want to thank you guys so much for coming out. This was so much fun, being able to experience all of these. You did such a great job of being able to, for all of us to be able to enjoy it ourselves, which is always a treat, because a lot of times we get onesies or twosies, and this time we were able to enjoy it all together. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time that you took today, and I hope everybody enjoyed this session. This session will be on my YouTube channel, Michael Landis Cheese, and our pairings will be on there, along with the websites and additional information where you can be able to pick these up yourself. So I want to thank you again for coming out today. And for those of us on the West Coast, it'll continue on being happy hour. Gillian, enjoy, and hopefully you'll catch up with us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
Bye,
right.
everyone.